celebrate 30 years. We're here to celebrate 30 years of Earth Force today. And it is really a pleasure, and it's kind of like a reunion, I think, to have this group together of old friends, new friends, all of us here. But we are here for the Earth Force Youth Trailblazers, past and present, and I think we're in for a treat today. We're going to kick off in a moment with a very short video. Unfortunately, the CEO of Earth Force, Vince Meldrum, is not able to be with us live because he's off in Japan actually doing environmental action civics there, which is, we'll be curious to hear about what adventures he brings back. But we do have a very short pre-recorded video. So I'm going to turn over to our colleagues on the back end and have the video play.
Blazers, past and present. I'm Vince Meldrum, the president and CEO of Earth Force. This event is part of our 30th anniversary celebration. Yeah, we've been around for 30 years, and we're really taking some time to look back and see what impact we had and what we've done right, and try to learn from our mistakes. And so this event is really about the young people who have participated in Earth Force over the years. And so we've put together a really cool panel for you. It's going to be some young people that were with us at the very start, as well as some young person that's with us now. We're going to talk about how Earth Force impacted their lives and what they took from it. And also, you're going to see a lot of what we learned from them to make the program work. And so we're really excited for it. I know some of you know these folks from way back in the day, and I encourage you to put things in the chat, to put in remembrances, to ask questions. If you have a funny story, feel free to add that as well. I certainly would if I was there. But I'm not there today, and that's something I want to apologize for. I'm sad I'm going to miss this, but I'm actually in Japan. And in Japan, I'm visiting with some educators and students and researchers who have taken the Earth Force process and have adapted it to work in their communities. And I'm going to learn how that has worked for them. And I'm going to interact with kids and teachers and see really what's happening here. And we'll fill you in on that in a couple of weeks. We'll produce a podcast or a video where we can tell you how this visit went, and you can learn from it just like we have. And so I'm excited to let the panel go. You guys have a great afternoon, and I hope you have a fun time, as much fun as we have had interacting with these young people. All the best. Have a great day.
Well, I'm glad we got a little bit of a snippet from Vince, who's been actually involved in Earth Force also for a very long time. And I think one of the things that some of us were talking about was when he was in a different role, I think at the very first days of Earth Force. So it's been fun to see the growth of all of us in this process. So I'm going to just briefly introduce myself. I have the pleasure of sort of playing quasi-moderator and also sometimes panelist. So we'll keep it interesting. My name is Anna Brown, and I use she, her pronouns. I am coming into this call today from Washington, D.C., but I actually live in Maine, which is actually unceded lands of the Wabanaki peoples. And I, in my sort of daytime life and day job, I work a lot on climate change adaptation and resilience, and really at the intersections of kind of human systems and the built environment, and thinking about social equity. I am going to ask that each of our panelists do a brief, short introduction. I will just say that it is an absolute honor and pleasure to get to be together with this group of people. I have known Bharat and Anissa and Antonio for for 30 years, and maybe even a little bit more. And Bridget Baron and I have the pleasure of serving currently on the Earth Force board now. And so it's been really fun to reconnect. And I think we're gonna just hear some reflections about sort of what we're all involved in now from different perspectives, and do some reminiscing, and I think also sort of sense making in a way. So I will turn it over to Anissa. You want to just do a short intro?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Anissa Couvillon. I am in Austin, Texas, and excited to be here with everyone today. It is also an honor to be alongside all of you. But I currently, my day job too, I am a technology veteran, having been in the digital software space for many, many years. And in addition to that, our family has started a school, a learner-driven school. We're part of a broader network of schools. And so it's been an exciting journey to see those endeavors.
Excellent. How about Antonio?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Antonio Gonzales, coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was one of the founding youth advisory board members for Earth Force, and I can't tell you what a joy it is to be with everybody, to see these familiar faces today. So currently, I'm the Chief Academic Officer at Albuquerque Public Schools here in central New Mexico, and I look forward to our conversation together today.
Thanks, Antonio. Bharat?
Hi, everybody. It's such a joy to be back with old friends after so long. My name is Bharat Venkat. I am a faculty member at UCLA, and I run the UCLA Heat Lab, where we study the effects of extreme heat on health. And thank you for all of you for being here, and thanks for having me.
Excellent. And now, Bridget, maybe give a brief intro, and then we're going to also, if you'd like to sort of parlay that into also telling us a bit about the work that you're involved in currently, that would be excellent.
Yeah, so I'm Bridget Baron. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a youth member on the Earth Force Board of Directors. And I am 17, so I don't have a day job really, unless you count being a senior at Alexandria City High School. But I got involved with Earth Force in the 7th grade, and a bunch of my classmates and I co-founded a youth organization called Standing for Tomorrow that is just it's a youth advocacy group that we founded based on a specific issue in our middle school, which I'll get into when prompted.
Excellent. Yeah, well, thank you very much. And that's a great setup, Bridget. It would be great if you could give us a bit of a picture of the story you've been involved in around the mold work in Virginia.
Yeah, so my middle school was rotting from the inside out. No, that isn't a joke. We had toxic mold all over the building, including in my 7th grade biology classroom. That teacher happens to use the Earth Force model, so she was able to help us, so my classmates and I decided that something had to be done. We tested our classrooms to determine exactly what kinds and concentrations of mold we were looking at. The answers had terrible implications for human health, but they offered explanations for a variety of health events experienced by staff and students alike. The most essential part of our advocacy was the research that we did. We read everything mold-related we could get our hands on. Our teacher even framed our curriculum through the lens of the mold issue. We taught ourselves everything we could about the human health effects of mold, causes of mold growth, proper mold testing and remediation methods, and even regulations regarding mold in indoor spaces in our state and in others. We interviewed our fellow students and some staff members to get personal accounts of what the toxic mold was doing to our community, which we added to our ever-growing pile of evidence. Shortly thereafter, we began to speak to adults in positions of power. We invited them into our classroom to show them a presentation of our findings, recorded community testimony, the science that backed up our claims, and everything we knew about other states' mold policies. This was one of the parts of the project that impacted my character the most. I used to be terrified of public speaking. I won't lie, I was scared to the point of tears for my first presentation, but I didn't want to disappoint my teacher, and I definitely didn't want to let down everyone who was suffering from mold exposure symptoms in my school. Eventually, I got used to public speaking and even learned to enjoy it. Hence why I'm here and able to do this now without, my voice trembling. Each presentation led to the next, and each person we met with was kind enough to recommend the next stakeholder we should reach out to. After speaking to one of our state senators, a bill was drafted that would address the issue of mold in public schools all across Virginia. The rest of Standing for Tomorrow and I were invited down to Richmond to testify on behalf of our bill. It was terrifying, but it paid off, and our bill was signed into law in April 2020, 18 months after our mold journey began in our 7th grade biology classroom.
Bridget, I've heard you tell that story in different ways a few times since we've known each other, and it's so inspiring. It's really powerful. So I really appreciate you sharing kind of, and very briefly, which is impressive, actually. It's really exciting to hear about that work. I did want to also, we're going to turn to the panelists now, or to all of us. We're going to have a bit of a kind of discussion, questions. I did want to also invite anybody who may be watching or listening in, who maybe had played a part, currently plays a part with or works on Earth Force projects, or previously was involved with some version of Earth Force. Absolutely would love to hear from you. So feel free to drop a message in the chat. There will also be a survey at the end to kind of capture a sense of who's listening. But it would be really wonderful to know who else is out there, because there's so many wonderful folks involved and back through the years. But what I thought would be great is if we could each maybe talk a little bit about the environmental action work that we were involved in. Bridget, we heard from you. You are 17 and still, I would say, in the young person category. Those of us who are here because it's 30 years of Earth Force, we have moved on a little bit. But I think it would be great to hear about the different, the ways in which we were involved in environmental action work as young people. And maybe, Antonio, I'd love to turn it to you first to just give us a picture.
Yeah. Congratulations, Bridget. That's an awesome story. Love to hear more about it one day. But at any rate, I really came across what would be Earth Force, didn't know it at the time, through a essay submission to the Kids World Council. And this was, I think, when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And I submitted my essay as part of an assignment in class, and I was really intrigued by the reality that I was growing up in rural New Mexico. And when I would go to the urban centers in New Mexico, which there aren't very many, I would see that there was opportunities to recycle. And I would see that there was opportunities to really have access to recycling and recycling centers and recycling bins within office buildings or even schools. But that wasn't the case in the area in which I grew up. So that was really what I wrote about. And as the years went on, I really grew more and more passionate about that work. But one of the things that I really want to stress is through the Kids World Council and later through what we would come to know as Earth Force is the notion of leadership development and the notion of empowering young people to have voice. Is really what has been center to who I am and really what I've done as a profession, going into education myself and working to empower others, young people and those that work with young people, to really have voice and to have the opportunity to express their passions and what is important to them and to lift that up into real change. So I have to laugh because, like you, Bridget, I trembled if I would have to say anything in front of too big of a crowd, but with a little bit of encouragement and empowerment. And in large measure, Earth Force did that for me and for others. I was able to find my voice and eventually my leadership journey, which I'll just say in some ways is just beginning. So that's a little bit about my beginning with the work around environmental action, civics, and Earth Force.
Thanks so much. Kids World Council is that sort of, there's all these little memories that I think have been flooding back, but that was more than 30 years ago, I think, Antonio. Anissa, do you want to share a little bit about your work as a young person?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to Antonio's path, I began to learn more about just what's possible with the environment, and all that started at a Montessori school that I attended, and it was really intriguing to me to be given sort of the power to recycle and to start a vegetable co-op and to do these things within my small little school community. But when I looked up and out, I saw that kind of the world around me was not really having that same fundamental experience of recycling and some of the things that are just so important and profound to to caring for the earth, which led me to Earth Force, and to be a part of this awesome group of individuals. And I will say, I think that the experiences that we had, and the impact that we made within some of the really big projects and initiatives during our time on the Youth Advisory Board has been instrumental and profound in so many ways. Everything from just having the agency to be a leader at a very young age, to taking action and believing that we can make a difference. And the event for me that stands out was and I think both Antonio and Barrett were there, so you might be able to share a little bit. But we had a Nickelodeon Get the Vote Out, I think, if I'm saying it correctly. And it was an incredible experience to be alongside so many, both adults and young people, and inspiring them in a way that kind of gave them agency to believe that they could also have a big impact. And so it's just been an exciting journey to reflect back on our time together, and now to see what Earth Force is doing now and today, and the impact that's having.
Thanks so much, Anissa. Oh, and it's great. We're having some people respond in that they were involved. Thatcher, thanks for dropping your comment in. Barrett, talk about your work as a young activist in the environmental space.
Well, as Antonio put it earlier, I think I'm still a young activist in the environmental space, but a little bit less young than before. So I grew up in suburban rural Wisconsin, and I remember before Earth Force looking around and seeing a lot of things that didn't look right to me, in terms of land use decisions, in terms of ability to kind of use, to get across town without taking a car. Recycling was non-existent, all of these things. And I remember feeling that I didn't know quite what to do or how to act on it. And I remember trying to talk to people about it and not really getting very far. And Earth Force for me was really providing me with the vocabulary and the tools and the skills, and also the confidence to believe that what I thought about the world mattered in some way. And I think, I remember, and this might have been pre-Earth Force or before I was involved, but I remember getting involved with Pennies for the Planet and raising money in school, in my I think middle school or elementary school, to buy, I think, like protect rainforest land in somewhere in South America. I don't remember the details very well. But then I remember once I got involved with Earth Force, just being involved in all sorts of civic actions, right? So not just kind of fundraising, not just kind of cleaning up, but really thinking about how do you enact political change that changes the very landscape, the kind of social fabric of a town, of your community. And I remember specifically the Get Outspoken campaign, and where we kind of really pushed to get bike routes installed in cities so that there were other ways of getting around that weren't just relying on cars and putting a lot of carbon emissions into the air. And that really kind of pushed me into a different role in my town, to actually get involved with civic leaders and community members, and kind of push for the installation of these bike lanes. And to be able to do that at a young age, I think shaped my sense of what I could possibly do moving forward in life. And so I think it really was a formative experience for me, those years with Earth Force. And I think they've shaped my career and my life into this very moment.
So great. Thank you so much. It's really great to reflect back on kind of those early, I think, formative years. And I'll just share like a little bit about my involvement and kind of how I got involved in Earth Force as well, because I think it was also very powerful and sort of set me on a course, I think, for where I'm at. But as a young person in my town, so this was back in the 80s, and at time that not unlike now, which is a little bit a lot going on in terms of environmental destruction. And I was struck by some of the things I was seeing on the news, concerned about the ozone layer depletion, and was really really worried about what the future would look like. And so together with some of my friends, we ended up forming a group to kind of initially just sort of like share our concerns and talk about what we were worried about, but then sort of started to think about how we might turn that to try to think about actions we might take. And we were fortunate to have some amazing teachers who, this was before Earth Force, but I think really embodied the sort of spirit of like youth-driven activism, and had a space to really sort of identify the areas of interest. And so together collectively, this with this group of folks, we as like 8 and 9, maybe 10-year-olds, ended up deciding that we wanted to try to tackle styrofoam pollution in our town, and ended up going forth before the town council with a proposal to ban polystyrene foam from fast food packaging. And we're able to actually do that, which was at the time, it actually didn't feel remarkable. I will say, I think it's been looking back that it feels more remarkable and I'm curious, Bridget, like if that sort of about your journey, sort of being in a classroom where, you know, you have a guide, but I'm curious, like, do you see the work you've done on mold legislation in the state, at the state level? Like, how has that sort of felt normal to you, or how? Be curious for your reflections on that.
So the bill got signed in April 2020. Literally, it happened, I think, 2 weeks after my school was shut down from COVID. So I heard none of it really. I found out because my mom came out to tell me I'd been doing stuff in the backyard, and she was like, "Your bill got signed," and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," but it didn't seem real at all. It was just kind of a thing that happened. It had been out of my hands for so long because I went and I spoke in front of the very first subcommittee that the bill went to. But after that, I mean, there was nothing I could do other than obsessively check the bill tracking page, you know? And so I kind of hadn't been thinking about it. And my high school campus doesn't have mold to the same extent that the middle school did. It never really did. I've seen some articles and numbers and things, and so I know that the bill has been used to force action in other school districts. But no, I haven't seen the impacts personally, which, yeah, it's kind of hard to believe sometimes. But then every now and then I go and I look back at old pictures and I'm like, oh, that's right. Yeah, I did do that.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, no, it's really, really inspiring. And great to keep seeing folks dropping comments. And please do keep sharing your experiences and connections to Earth Force. I did want to sort of turn back to the panel. And I think another thing I've reflected on, and I think would love to hear your thoughts about, or kind of what about the skills that you learned. And a few of you have kind of touched on some of the skills you picked up on your journey, but that have kind of carried forward and affected your future and your life journey. But I'd be interested to hear others, to hear each of you kind of talk about what are the different skills that you've cultivated and you sort of cultivated at that early age, that have been formative. I don't know, Barrett, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I was going to really quickly go back to what Bridget had just said and what you had said, Anna, about, I think one of the impacts, Bridget, that you're going to see is that other people are going to be inspired by your work, right? I was inspired by Anna's work. I remember hearing that story about the styrofoam being banned and thinking, if someone my age can do this, that means maybe I can do this too. And that had such a huge impact on me. It still does, right? And so I think that you're going to see over and over again the ways in which the work that you've done will inspire others to take action. But yeah, going to your question about this, I guess, skills or things I've learned, I think something Antonia mentioned earlier, which was leadership, right? I think Earth Force, being involved with Earth Force, really taught me about what leadership means. And it doesn't always actually mean leading. It doesn't always mean being in front. It means also listening, stepping back, and supporting people who are doing the good work. And that's something that I'm so grateful to have learned so young, and to be part of an amazing group of folks who were all leaders, right? We had this youth advisory board of I don't remember how many people were on the board at once. I think it was something like 10, 15 maybe. And we all came in with we had meetings twice a year, I think in DC, and we'd have these thick binders. We'd read the binders cover to cover and come in, and we'd have things to say and ideas and things we wanted to change and campaign ideas and different ideas about how you create social change, environmental change. And to be amongst a group of really inspiring young people, I think really changed the direction of my life and taught me to make that possible for others. But I think as a teacher, one of my goals is that my students have that same sense of empowerment. They feel that they don't have to wait until they're older. I think that's the biggest thing. They don't have to wait until they're my age and then they can go and fix things. That's not the point. The point is that they can do it now, and they can develop those skills and become leaders in their own lives and their communities.
I love that. And yeah, I feel like this is like thought connecting for me too. I feel like so much of what you said, Bart, resonates certainly for me too, around different models of leadership. And I just had an image back to, and then I want to hear from you, Anissa. I don't remember when it was, but there was some moment where we were crafting the State of the World address. Were all any of you? It was in DC. It might have been before, right, like in the pre-Earth Force, but I remember like all of us together, like drafting this statement, and maybe one of us, maybe we read it on maybe we read it when we were testifying Capitol Hill. I don't remember. Details don't matter, but just that I have this image, and I still remember like being together, working together, kind of consensus based, like coming up with this statement that was going to be read in some, some important stage of sort, and like that collegiality, I think, was really powerful. Anissa, talk about some of your skills using that widely, takeaways.
Yeah, and I'll build a little bit on what Barrett's already shared with just this idea of leadership and the binder, right? I think that binder, like it was the biggest binder that you could get, but it resembled this level of trust and belief that that us as the youth advisory board was capable of solving big problems. And to your point, Anna, and sharing kind of the world draft, like we fundamentally collaboratively work together to solve really big problems. And so within sort of the guise of leadership, I can think of problem solving, I can think of communication, working together as a team for sort of the greater good. There is so much that, if I think back at our time and our experience, I think one of the biggest things that has kind of stayed with me throughout my life, and that I fundamentally believe started, within my younger years in certain school communities, and then traveled through with Earth Force, is this idea that children are capable of far more than anyone ever imagined. And being able to have that kind of belief within, and then to pursue things, in kind of future years, it's been just an incredible opportunity to reflect more recently and hear where everyone is today and what big things you're still doing. So it's been a wonderful journey to reflect back, and certainly excited to hear more. Antonio, I'm sure you probably have some thoughts too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I take away is that as young people, our involvement in Earth Force gave us a sense of worth and gave us a sense of we can lean in to something special and greater than ourselves. And through that, it kind of propelled us to opportunities within and out, even outside of Earth Force. But I think one of the things that I really just need to say is there was so many influential adults along the way in our work with Earth Force that really empowered us and facilitated us as young people, showed us the path, a good path, to really engage in leadership development and to engage in civic action and to prepare ourselves to be articulate, be it in the Vice President of the United States office or on Capitol Hill testifying. And that was really quite fundamental in, I know, my formation as a person, let alone a professional. And I think I probably speak for my colleagues on the panel as well. But definitely, I just want to say that, and I don't want to start mentioning all these names because I'll leave somebody out, but so many wonderful people throughout the years that really took a chance on us and really built us up as people and as leaders is something I know I'm indebted to this very day.
Thank you so much. Shout out to Ella Hampson Brown, who is my niece on the call and has a question whether Earth Force is in Brooklyn. I don't think there is a chapter in Brooklyn, but we can, we can come back to responding more fully through other channels. I wanted to ask to turn maybe to you, Bridget, for the next question, which is to think about, just to reflect on why these kinds of experiences, the experience that you had with the work in your classroom in the state, how has that been? Why is that important for young people today?
Oh gosh, there are so many reasons for that. A lot of the things that were answered in the last question, self-confidence, communication skills, persuasion, learning how to persuade, to speak in front of an audience, learning how to do research, how to use that research to enact change. But most importantly, learning that you can make change, especially as a young person, but also just in general, because it is so easy to fall into this idea that none of us have the ability to influence the world around us, our government, or any of those things. But the power of democracy is real, and part of the Earth Force process and doing advocacy of this sort from a young age is learning that having an influence in the government and the world around you is possible, especially in a democratic system like the one the United States has. I'm sorry, I've entirely lost my train of thought. It's a major confidence builder, and it gives everyone that I've spoken to who has done similar things the tools to move on to do other things later on, and to believe in their power to influence the world around them.
Yeah, I think super well said, and I love the bringing up kind of the engagement with democracy and sort of learning from a young age that it's that we need to be active in those systems to make them work. Barrett, how can you talk about your reflections on why this engagement is so important for young people today?
I mean, today more than ever, right? I think, unfortunately, the really sad thing is that as important as it was for our generation, a couple of decades back, it's even more pressing now, as we see. I remember when I was young, I would talk about climate change with people, and it was kind of like, is that really a thing? Or, they might not even heard of it, right? And now you still have, climate change denialists, but you're hard pressed to find someone who doesn't even know that it's happening, right? Who hasn't heard about it, who doesn't recognize to some degree the severity of what we're experiencing at the moment. And for that reason, I think it's just so essential that young people get what Earth Force has to offer, right? This sense of leadership, this sense of empowerment, this understanding that you can create real sustainable change in the world around you, and not just as an individual, but with others. I think that's a really crucial part of the Earth Force model, is that we don't do things as individuals. It's really, really hard to make change just by yourself. But if you get a friend, if you get another friend, if they have a friend, if they have a sister or a brother, and you start to kind of build a community, a collaboration that could be in your town or across towns, or in our case, with the Youth Advisory Board, you can start to make C's part, right? You would start to actually create change and inspire others to take action. And I think that's just, that is so vital at the moment that we're in, because there is so much that needs to be done still. Arguably even more, and I think that's the scary thing. But there's just so much hope in the fact that you have, brilliant, amazing young people like Bridget who are making these huge strides and really kind of setting the terms of the conversation and making people realize that, hey, these are things that are not kind of distant and far away in the future. They're now, they're in our schools and in our classrooms, and they're affecting us. Right?
Yeah, Antonio and Anissa, I want to hear from both of you. Does one of you want to jump in on this one first? Or I'll pick one of you.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
Experience, why these experiences are important for young people today. I think that one of the best ways of learning for young people is hands-on real world experiences, is hands-on projects, is identifying in the world ways that we can kind of improve what's there. I think Bridget's story of mold and the accomplishments with the bill, that's an incredible journey of what you were able to accomplish. And so having that opportunity within EarthForce and just giving the young people the ability to problem solve and identify opportunity for civic action, I think is such an opportunity. I think within that too, kind of if I were to build on hands-on projects and kind of real world experiences, what comes along with that is figuring out how to work together, figuring out roles and responsibilities, figuring out a collaborative approach, or perhaps you have to persuade, certain, people on the team to do it a certain way. And so all of these types of experiences, I think, can have really kind of a profound experience on young people today, but also kind of the future as they chart their own path. And, essentially, find a calling that they can identify within themselves where they can also have an impact in the world in the future.
Yeah, I agree. With all of that, I would also say that I'm inspired by you, Bridget, and what you represent and those you work with. So I also want to encourage our young people just to be involved and don't be afraid of being uncomfortable in these spaces of in the adult world, in boardrooms or conference rooms or hearing rooms. Your voice absolutely matters. And I would make an argument that your voice matters more because of what you represent as the future of any sphere of society, and really just leaning in to what you're passionate about. EarthForce did that for us. I know we're only representatives. There's others, and I feel so fortunate to be a beneficiary of some of what I've gotten as a person because of EarthForce. But I know since EarthForce's beginning, it's given so many like me so much, and it's given them a tool or a space to be able to use their voice to promote and really lift up what's important to them, be it at the town level, the city level, the state level, or even the national level. And stick with it, and don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, because I'll tell you that when I started with EarthForce, I was the uncomfortable guy from the small town who had to find my voice. And EarthForce gave me that voice to be able to advocate for what it is I'm passionate about. So I would also just end by saying that I agree wholeheartedly that it might be more important than ever now, based on all that's going on in the world, that our engagement is needed, and it's time that we continue to support one another in spaces like these.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Antonio, and all of you. Really great points. And I appreciate the sort of speaking to young people today, hearing some of your own reflections, Antonio, and how, you've grown a lot. We've all grown a lot as individuals. I'd like to pose to all of us another question. And Bridget, I want to actually start with you again. The question is about thinking about adults and kind of what advice you have to adults who are wanting to support and help young people to be change agents, making change in their communities. And Bridget, I'd love if you're willing to kick that off. That would be excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. The absolute best thing that any adult can do in any circumstance is to listen to the youth and to take them seriously. I had some instances in my own journey where some adults looked at us and were clearly underestimating us because of our age. It helped knowing a lot of statistics that 12 and 13-year-olds shouldn't have known. But it definitely was always easier when we didn't have to first when we didn't have to first convince the adults we were speaking to listen to us. And so if you go in willing to listen and to take the youth seriously and to listen to truths that may be uncomfortable, that in and of itself goes a very long way. And as for educators and youth mentors, if you're looking at a kid that you know has the potential to do something and is very passionate about what they're talking about, but they're just scared, then I would say maybe ignore them a little bit and kind of push them into something. I would not be here today if it wasn't for my 7th grade biology teacher. I was not going to volunteer for anything. I was terrified of public speaking. I didn't think anyone would ever take me seriously. I didn't think I could get any of my classmates to take me seriously. But she saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and she kind of forced me onto the presenter team. And so in some ways, I was giving my first few presentations under duress because I knew I would get a bad grade if I didn't do it. But she absolutely changed the course of my life. I found my passion for advocacy and for environmental science. And it turns out I'm not entirely terrible at public speaking, and this is actually kind of fun. So yeah, that's my advice.
I love that. Does anybody feel burned to jump in or?
I'll build off of maybe what Bridget has shared, and in addition to listening, leading with curiosity, it can be such a powerful tool, and not having the answers, right? Or thinking you might think or know that there's a particular answer, but really when youth are coming to share or have a passion or want to make change, support through curiosity, support through growth mindset, and almost step back and give them sort of the room and the ability and the power to problem solve and kind of figure it out. It's not going to be perfect. It might be messy. And that's okay. Failure, there's a lot of lessons in mistakes and failures at an earlier age, better than at a later. But just encouragement around curiosity, stepping back, and really trusting that young people are capable of so much.
Bard or Antonio? Do either of you want to pile on? I can jump in just to build off from. I think I completely agree with both of what you've said, Anissa and Bridget. I think the as I said at the beginning, I when I was a young person and involved in sort of making taking action locally, I really didn't know anything different. I think I was very fortunate to be in an environment where I had educators and parents that were that sort of did have that openness and kind of respect. I think putting forth like sort of trust and responsibility, a sense of like following and supporting the direction and drive that I had and with some of my classmates and peers. And I think just sort of it was just respect. I think at the end of the day, it was just sort of trust and respect that we had something to say, that what our voices mattered, and we were part of a community too. And so it would make sense that we would have ideas about a better state that we wanted things to be in, a different set of conditions, and that we would want to problem solve. And I think to sort of support that and agree with it's maybe not messy, and it is maybe messy, but it allowed for just building muscles. And I think we were talking before we had this call, but sort of building muscles and like charting a course where there is no course. And I feel like that is a skill set I have definitely had to lean on throughout my whole career. And I think that was sort of having the latitude to be able to identify a thing that I cared about, and to be able to have the space to follow that up in a way that was as a participant in our society.
And I think I would just add, I completely agree with everything that's been said. But as we're thinking about the role adults can play in this space, is maybe educator as facilitator, and just providing the space for young people to find their voice, to engage with each other. Yeah, it might be messy, and messy sometimes scary for teachers and other adults, but it's okay. And just providing these opportunities, facilitating these opportunities for young people to engage with policymakers, to engage with decision makers, and even just conceptualize ideas and hash out what they're passionate about, are really, I think, important to the critical thinking process, and also to empowering youth voice and citizenship and engagement. So I would just lend maybe that thought to the response to the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Yeah,
Anna, if you can, I might add a little bit just in the
sure.
context of, again, the story that Bridget shared, so exciting. And I know that there's lots of stories that many of you out there have with regards to the civic change that you're doing. But I will just say, like, young people are meant to be challenged. And so thinking through the lens of, now being an adult, but thinking back at my earlier years, is this idea that things can be hard and we can overcome challenging things, and just trusting and believing that youth can make a big difference. And it's always a reminder, because Bridget, you said it well. It took someone that was a mentor of yours to really walk alongside you and be a supporter and an encourager. And so that's the change that I think adults can truly have, is being, being that supporter to young people, believing and entrusting them that they can do hard things, and they can make a difference.
Thanks so much, Anissa. And Bridget, I don't know if you're seeing this comment right now, but clearly,
Yeah, I see it. Thank you very much.
clearly you can speak in public very well. And Amelia Bernstein, another board member of Earth Force, really wonderful to see these faces popping up, or see these names popping up. We have a couple minutes left if folks want to have if there are any threads that anybody wants to pick up on before we have a couple of additional elements before we close. But is there any burning thought from any of the panelists? I did want to just, I think probably, I don't know, the folks in the audience may have greater and lesser familiarity with Earth Force and sort of what the model of environmental action civics entails. But I think hopefully through the discussion elements have come out. But I think something, I think it was you that said it, Bridget, is really sort of the engagement with, I mean, we've all talked about it, engagement with sort of decision makers and in democracy, engagement with whether it's like town council or legislatures. But I think that is a kind of a core element that I think does make distinct this environmental action civic concept from other work that might be environmentally oriented, which maybe has a more science technology bent or maybe has environmental education and kind of being outdoors. All those are really wonderful. I think what I think has been interesting hearing from this group is just that that thread of having that connection point with policymakers and decision makers, and how that can be quite catalytic in terms of actually making change, but I think in terms of like understanding how to participate in society and in our communities. That was just one thing I was reflecting on from the discussion.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, seeing that attempted engagement returned from those public officials is incredibly powerful. I mean, we didn't actually think that we'd get responses from these website portals that we thought might have been like never-ending rabbit holes or something. But not only did we get emails back from state officials, city council members, and people of that sort, but they actually agreed to come into our classroom and talk to us in person during the school day. And it was astounding, and it taught us a lot.
Amazing. I know in a moment we do need to shift gears to watch a little bit of a video, but I wanted to just see if there's any kind of reflections or closing thoughts that any of the panelists want to share. And I might turn to you, Bharat, and put you on the spot.
Well, I was actually gonna say something, which is that, given that my work is still kind of centrally concerned with issues of, climate catastrophe and the environment, I've thought a lot about what Earth Force stood for me, and kind of, the thing that I realize is that it was 30 years ago and it still is an incredibly unique organization. The model of change that Earth Force advocates for is so distinct from what anybody else is doing, and has inspired so much the work other folks have done as well, to really kind of believe in the agency of young people, and to really advocate for change that isn't superficial, but that is sustainable, that is lasting, that is driven by policy and communities. That is just something that is so unique and so needed. And so I just wanted to say how glad I am that it's still ticking 30 years later.
I can just share some parting thoughts that it's been such an honor to regroup with everyone here, and such an honor to have gotten to know you all over the years, and all of the exciting, fun, challenging things that we embarked on. I look at my life today, and it shows up the things that I learned, and kind of the beliefs that Earth Force had in the earlier years of Earth Force kind of shows up in different ways for me, where, in this kind of space of digital transformation and partnering with big clients, the ability that we can problem solve and we can kind of chart our own path. And within our school, our school is 21st century learning, hands-on project-based learning, all about really giving agency to young people. And so the footprint of things that I learned and the skill sets during this time was just such an exciting time to reflect here with everyone today.
Tom Martin, it's so great to see that name pop up.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Tom was a former CEO of EarthForce. And again, still love seeing all the actions people are taking. Mirabelle, I saw your action of the work you're doing in your middle school. It's excellent. I know we're getting close to really needing to shift gears. We have one more little tiny segment before we wrap, and we will wrap on time. But I did want to just say what an absolute joy this has been. I think, Antonio, you were saying earlier that this is sort of like the fills your cup, fills your heart up kind of conversation, like sort of anticipating getting to reconnect and hear new inspiring stories. And that's absolutely been the case for me today. And I will say I don't think this was meant to be set up as a praise EarthForce kind of a session with like sort of a marketing pitch, but it sure looks like it because there's a lot of really amazing stories we all have about just how transformative I think this engagement of youth activism and kind of, I think EarthForce as a kind of conduit and a kind of champion of that space. So it's been a total pleasure. We have to do this again, not in the public setting to kind of reconnect. But thank you to each of the panelists for your time. We have two kind of more brief elements before this hour comes to a close. One is that we are conducting a survey, and I think the survey link will be put in the chat. Please take a moment to just fill out the survey as a participant, and we'd just love to know who's been listening and kind of get a better picture of that. And then we also have another exciting thing to celebrate, which is, well, EarthForce is 30. We have also been celebrating 25 years of being evaluated, and we have been working with Brandeis University. EarthForce has worked with Brandeis for 25 years. And it's actually really stunning the level of data that's been collected, longitudinal data around kind of the impacts of EarthForce. But Alan Melchior, who's been at Brandeis and the lead evaluator for 25 years, is retiring soon. And so we have a very small video to share to celebrate that. So I think that clip is going to roll. I think we're having a small technical issue. Here we go. Thank you so much. Really glad we could share that video. Thank you, Alan, for all of your work. I remember 25 years ago crossing paths, so it's really wonderful that you've been involved in all these years. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and yeah, get in touch. Thanks a lot. It's been a wonderful pleasure to be with all of you today, and thank you, everybody, for joining.